So in the last lesson I talked about functions, and there will be an opportunity to remind you about how those work in this lesson. Although first of all I would like to talk a bit about if statements. And we have come across if statements before in previous lessons. If statements basically test for a condition, and if the condition is met, the code inside their code block is executed. And if statements can also be paired with something else called an else statement, which is optional. And if the condition is in the if statement is not met, then the code in the else statement would be executed instead. So it makes sense in terms of the English language. If a condition is met, execute this code, else execute this other code. And I will show you the syntax on how to create an if statement in a minute, but first of all I would like to talk about comparison operators. Together with logical operators, these are how you create the statements that you are able to test using an if statement. So it's important to understand how these work. And these comparison operators are used mainly with numerical values, but also sometimes with other types of variables, such as a string can be used with this double equals. Double equals means is it exactly identical to, and there's another one here, is greater than, is something greater than something else, is less than, is greater than or equals to, is less than or equal to, and is not equal to. All of these will yield a Boolean output. So let's have a look at some examples. 5 double equals 5. Is 5 exactly equal to 5? Yes, it is. So it gives true. Is 5 exactly equal to 4? No, it's not. So it gives false. Is 5 greater than 4? Yes. Is 5 less than 4? No. Is 5 greater than or equal to 5? Well, yes, it is equal to 5. Is 5 not equal to 4? Well, yes, it is not equal to 4. It's different from 4. So you can use the outputs of those comparison operators. They yield Boolean outputs, and they can be used with these logical operators, because these logical operators, instead of comparing numerical values, they compare Boolean values. And they compare them in a very specific way. So this AND statement, the double ampersand sign, will compare two Boolean values, and it will yield a Boolean itself. All of these yield Boolean outputs. So if you have an AND and you have two true statements, the AND will yield true. If either of the two statements, or if both of the two statements, yield false, the double AND will also yield false. So both of them have to be true. So true and true gives true. For the OR, it's slightly different. True or true gives true. True or false also gives true. False or false gives false. The NOT only operates with one Boolean value. So not false is true, and not true is false. So let's have a look at some examples. I gave this one already. True and true gives true. True and false gives false. Here are some comparison operators which yield Booleans. 5 is exactly equal to 5, which is true. 5 greater than 4 is also true. True and true yields true. True or true, as I've just said, yields true. True or false also yields true. Not true is false. So here is the if statement syntax. The if statement makes use of, it can make use of logical operators and comparison operators, and it will test to see if the whole statement is true, and if it is, this code will be executed. If it's not, this code will be executed. So if variable 1 is greater than or equals to 10, if that statement is true, or if this statement if variable 2 is exactly the same as variable 3, if that is true, then this code will be executed. If both of these statements are false, then the other code in the else statement will be executed because it's an OR statement. Remember that the else is an optional extra and the if can stand alone without the else. Let's have a look at some examples. I've got my usual type of application and I've built in some functions. I haven't executed any of these functions yet, so if I go control test, none of the code will be executed. If you remember, in order to execute the code inside a function, you have to write the function name outside that function first. So if I compare this and add a number in there, the reason I'm adding a number in there is because I've set up this function with a number input, an integer input. So this is saying I need to put a number inside those parentheses. The output of the function is void, there is no output, so I'm not worrying about the output, there's no return statement. But this 9 goes into this variable to compare, which can be used then inside the function, and I'm using it with an if statement. So if to compare is greater than or equals to 10, another function is going to be executed, and this function accepts a string input. Print output is actually down here, so this function print output will accept a string input, has no output, it has void there, and then this string is used to set the text property of the output text field, which is on the stage. So whenever you see this print output, that's just saying send this text to the stage. And because I'm putting in 9 into this function, it's going to be compared in the if statement. If 9 is greater than or equal to 10, execute this code. 9 is not greater than or equal to 10, 9 is less than 10, so this is going to be a false statement, which means that this code isn't going to be executed. This code will be executed instead. So I'm expecting it to say less than 10. And that's what it's doing. If I put in 11 in here, 11 will go into this value in the function. It can be used here, 11 greater than or equals to 10 gives true, which will run this code in the if statement. So it's going to say greater than or equal to 10 when I test it. If I just delete that so that that function doesn't run anymore. The next function down is logical AND. This function I've set up to have an int variable input and a boolean input. And as you can see, those can be both used inside this if statement. So if I just write some code to run that function, I just have to use the name of the function. So I put logical AND 5 true. The reason I have to do that is because the first one has to be an int, so I've just decided to put 5. The second one has to be a boolean, so I've decided to put true. So this if statement now is going to use those two values to make a statement, and it's going to test that statement to see if it's true or false. So is 5, this to compare, greater than or equal to 10? No, it's not, it's false. And is this enable comparison, which is true? Is true exactly the same as this double equals? Is true double equal true? Well, yes, true is exactly the same as true. So this is going to resolve as true. So I've got a false and a true. And if you remember, I said that AND will only yield to true if both of the things it's looking at are true. Otherwise, it will yield a false. So this if statement is going to resolve this statement, and it's going to say it's false. So it's going to ignore this bit of code and run instead this bit of code with the else statement logical AND returned false. If I make the number greater than 10, so now both of these will be true, the AND will return true. And so the first bit of code is executed. And I can do something very similar with the next function, which is exactly the same, except that an OR is being used instead of an AND. So we have 5 or true. 5, remember, gives false. In this statement, is 5 greater than or equal to 10. That's false. True, exactly the same as last time. Is it identical to true? Yes, it is. So we've got a false or true. And if you remember, the OR, if it sees either of these as being true or both of them, it will yield a true. So this if statement is going to be true if I write these two values as 5 and true. So it's returned true. If I make both of them false, it will return false. So I hope you're getting the hang of this if statement and function business. If I now just do the last one, logical not, if I put a true in it, you might expect it's going to say false, because as I said before, it's going to give the opposite, and that is how I've set up this function. So it's taking a Boolean input and then saying, is this input, the reverse of it, is that equal to true? And I've put in a true, so is the reverse of true, is false, exactly the same as true? And no, it's not, it's going to return this second statement instead when I put in a true. And the opposite will happen if I put in a false. But I think we've seen enough of the code for the moment. You can look at it later on your own and test things out. But in summary, if statements execute code if the statement they test resolves to true, and we create a statement using a combination of comparison operators, such as the double equals, the greater than, the less than. And we can also use those with logical operators, the AND, the OR, and the NOT. And in the next lesson we'll be using functions and if statements, and in fact everything we've learned so far, to create an actual application.